Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the final Harmony Insights lunch date of 2020. I am thrilled to have you here. This is a momentous occasion. My name is Erich Kurschat. I am the owner of Harmony Insights LLC, a company that allows me to work with organizations and clients, consultants using the DISC personality assessment. I actually did a DISC session earlier today for a couple of local SHRM chapters here. That's a Society for Human Resources Management here in Chicago. And love talking about DISC whenever I have the opportunity, helping companies to better understand their teams, individuals on those teams, how they can connect with one another and communicate influentially and productively along the way with one another and their stakeholders. I'm also the founder of the HR Hot Seat Inclusive Mastermind community, real HR pros solving real HR problems, as we say. We tackle common HR related challenges. Our events are entirely virtual these days, entirely free, and we draw HR practitioners, service providers, students, folks in job transition. The list goes on and on, but anybody who's willing to take part and eager to take part in an HR focused conversation, all about support and accountability and everything that you would hope to find in an HR networking community. That's all at hrhotseat.com. You are here today for the final Harmony Insights lunch date in the year 2020. This is something that I started, as many of you know, in April, because I said, all right, I need to remain inspired. There's a bunch of nonsense going on in the world right now, and I'm going to get all caught up in it if I'm not continuing to connect with folks who inspire me to do my best work. I called it a lunch date because this happens between 12 and 12:30 Central Time, which is the time zone I'm in, so in the middle of my lunch hour. And it is an opportunity again for me to take that 30-minute break, to be inspired, to do my best work going into my afternoon. And people started to join me for those conversations. They got better and better. And they've culminated in today's conversation with my good friend, Kimberly LeClair from East Willow. Kim, welcome to today's Harmony Insights lunch date.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for doing this. And hello, people. Hello. Some new friends on LinkedIn. Yes.
We got a bunch of people waving. I love it.
Yay.
We even have clappy hands emojis from Tina. Kim, I am thrilled to have you here. You and I first met at the Career Transition Center in Chicago. Free plug for them. Anybody who is in job transition or considering it here in the Chicago area, ctcchicago.org. They do fantastic work. I won't go into the detail there, but it's a special place, special enough that Kim and I spent time there and then met each other through that community. Kim, you are the owner of East Willow, which people may not know. What do you do through East Willow? What services do you provide people?
Great question, Eric. So thank you for having me here. So I am effectively a freelance web designer. So what am I talking about here today? So for the last 8.5 years, I've done freelance web design. You can go to eastwillow.com and primarily work with very small companies, usually company of one, sometimes job seekers, and I do websites. And really that's grown over time to be websites, but also what I call the more foundational pieces, which are visual identity and messaging work. And I also, there's my site. There you go. So, so yeah, that's what I've been doing for the last 8.5 years. So, yeah.
So I know you to be somebody who, well, I mean, let's be honest, you chose for today's conversation a topic that or the topic that we are titling Turning Toward Each Other, a Pandemic's Silver Lining, which I think is one of the best titles we've come up with for this entire series. I know you to be somebody who is a connector of people. I'll say that right off the bat. You have a passion for Clifton Strengths, which used to be known as the Strength Finder. You have a passion for coaching, connecting people with one another. I think I especially admire you for being a connector of people to themselves and to their values, to the ability to articulate who they are and what value they bring to the work that they do and the relationships that they engage in. Would you mind telling me a little bit more about your relationship to the word connection?
It's a very good question. Thank you for the kind words. So the connection. So I think I will say this. So I am an extrovert who has been working from home in my little basement hovel here for the last 8.5 years. So um it's interesting to think about connection. When you're in the world working, you have coworkers and you have all that stuff that happens. I think the idea of what it's interesting. I'm really thinking about what does connection mean to others, but then I'm also thinking about this: what does connection to yourself mean? And I think as I've gotten older, spent more time by myself, and those two things have been happening simultaneously, so it's hard to tell which is the driver. It has become clear to me that you need there is something about being connected to yourself that then creates the ability to connect with others. I was thinking about this as I was thinking about getting ready for this today. There's almost a virtuous cycle that goes on there, where when we're with people who we're truly connected with, and we can talk about what that really looks like, but that we we get seen, and in getting seen and being witnessed, we then can witness ourselves. And it becomes this. And I think so. Maybe I would almost think about, it's interesting. Maybe it's connecting, not connection, it's a verb. It's an
I
action.
love that distinction. So connection is sort of the end result, I suppose, but connecting is the process. If I
Right.
hit a button, as people have heard me say, if I hit a button on LinkedIn that says connect, we are then connected.
Right.
What is that really? It's if
That's
I've
right.
then set aside the pursuit of connecting further with that person, I've missed the boat, it sounds like you're saying.
Well, I think, I mean, and because you do this so well. You create creating connections. But I think I've just been recently, and I think it's part of this COVID time, really fascinated with this idea of, well, I mean, it goes straight to the thing, which is loneliness and how that impacts us, and then how we get out of that. And I do think I like this. I've never said it before, but I like it. Connecting, it's a verb, it's an action. And then what that means is it's something that we can become more skilled at.
Yes. So much around this. I wish we had so much more time than we do. So let's pause there for a moment, just long enough for me to pull in a poll that I've put together.
Wow.
You've already touched on some of the challenges that you see that we face currently related to meaningful connection, connecting with one another. So hopefully people will see this poll. It's in 3 questions. The first one says, have you felt more connected or less connected to others during the pandemic? You have a few options there,
Mm.
with about the same being one of your options. 2, if you have felt less connected, why do you think that is? Few options there. Obviously, so many more that you may, so many other things you may point to, and you're welcome to use this is an anonymous poll, but if you want to expound on your answer, you can put it in the chat area. I'm pointing around my screen like you can all see what I'm seeing. And then number 3, if you felt more connected, why do you think that is? So hopefully you have a chance to respond. I see some votes coming in, so hopefully folks are seeing that. While people dive into this, Kim, let's talk about some of those challenges that you think we face specifically today related to connecting meaningfully with ourselves and other people, and perhaps the work that we do, the meaningful work we have the
Yeah.
privilege of doing.
Another good. So barriers to connection, right? Where's my this crazy thing, right? Such a miracle. Such a miracle. But even think about how you sit with someone and they're looking at their phone or any of that. There's such a barrier. I heard this great quote yesterday that tech, that like our technology has turned our time into confetti. Isn't that kind of an interesting idea? And then, but it's also created so much distraction. So busyness, right? Distraction, busyness, these are real barriers to, you know, being with someone. And of course, the same idea with ourselves, right? I read another thing yesterday, something about like how much, like really when you're honest with yourself, how long when you wake up, like when you wake up in the morning, how long is it until you're on technology?
Yeah.
Unfortunately for me, it's like a tiny bit of time. And so once you're in that focused on the outside world place, I think it's difficult to listen to yourself.
Your point
And
about
of course,
busyness, I
yes.
really like, because sometimes we say that as a mark of pride, right? How are
Oh
you?
yeah.
I've
Oh,
been so busy.
oh yeah.
You
That's what
know?
I call the busy badge. I used to say that. I've got a busy badge. I'm so busy I can't possibly. Yeah, it's like it's kind of unfortunate that we can't take time for one
Yeah.
another.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And of course now we have this, right? Now we're all in Zoom world, which is such a weird thing. It's okay to think about. It's a miracle that we're doing this. It
Mhm.
is an absolute 5 years ago, this was not, I don't 5 years, it was not a possible. This is Star Trek land, really it is. So the ability to do this is tremendous. But it's not the same. We all know that. Although here's what's interesting. This is interesting. So I do improv. It's one of the, so I do, and of course in improv, you're with people and you're really picking up on everything that's going on in the room. Well, when you do improv in Zoom, here's something that happens. You have to listen more. It's almost as if all these other senses that are normally around us aren't available. And what you have is the listening, right? You have some verbal cue, but it's like, from the whatever middle down, but this idea now that I'm really listening. And also because of the way the Zoom handles audio, you can't, the interruption is harder. So you really have to just sort of slow down a little bit and listen. So there's an advantage, I think, with Zoom. Anyway, that was a ramble. Sorry, I'm a rambler.
No, it's helpful, and I'm happy. I mean, that's why I specifically chose you as a guest. As people know, I choose my guests and they choose our topics, and I only choose guests that I've had fantastic conversations with in the past. And in terms of connection, you and I, going back years at this point, have made an effort to connect regularly, once a month for the most of that time on Skype or Zoom, because we crave that connection to one another. I leave our conversations feeling more inspired and more like myself and all of the things that I want to feel. And you've claimed to feel similarly. And so we've been intentional about making that connection, 9.99 times out of 10 virtually via Skype or Zoom. And so I go back to you saying that it's a miracle. If I had to drive out to the western suburbs every time I wanted to see you, I would love to do it. It would just happen less often.
Yeah, way less.
you
Way,
know?
way, way less. Way less. Yes.
I would like to end the poll, and it looks like we had about
Yeah.
6 people chime in. I apologize if anyone had issues participating. One person
Right.
said they feel more connected recently. Interesting. 5 people have said less
Yeah.
connected.
Connected.
If you felt less connected, what are the reasons? Of course, I just gave a few. 50% of the people feeling less connected said because of the state of the country. 33% said work-related factors. 33% said other. If you felt more connected, 33% of those responding said technology. 17% have said state of the country. 0% said work-related. 50% said other. I set this up very particularly with the same options because I have this idea that so much of how we feel connected to one another, to ourselves, to the work that we do is so relative, that it's based on in certain context. It's based in our perception of the world and what perceived obstacles we have around us. One person can look at technology and say, this has connected me to my world more than anything else I've ever had. And someone else looks at technology, to your point, and says, I've never felt less connected because I have to do this all behind a computer screen, miraculous though it may be. Does any of this surprise you, Kim, that you're seeing some people say the state of the country helps me feel more connected, and some people are saying the state of the country makes me feel less connected?
No, I know. I don't think it's surprising. I think this has been such an unusual time where, we've all sort of been stumbling through the darkness, trying to figure out what all this is. And it's not, I mean, obviously it's not just the pandemic. I mean, state of the country, social media creating all these silos. So, so much, but this is where I think is the opportunity, is that, this is such a weird time when this is, if we're lucky, hopefully, we won't experience this again in our lifetime, so this is such a weird time to take a moment and reflect on that. I mean, I think for this is a me thing, right? For a me thing has become a terrible waste of this time would be to not use it as a set aside, to not really see that, yeah, it's like Saturday night at 8 p.m. You're not out. Not that I was out that much. Okay, like I'm not some, like I'm an old lady now, but like, this idea that there is opportunity in this challenge. Now, if it's going well, then great. I think what you can say is you've created a life that sustains you. I mean, I think it's one of the things that it really probably was the prompt for even picking this topic, is what I think happened in the beginning, back March, April, May. You started to see, who are my real people? Who are those people who really I'm still wanting very much to stay connected with? And where are those looser connections falling away?
Some people have said in the chat area that they feel more widely connected, that they're missing
Yes.
deeper individual
Yep.
connections, but they feel
Yep.
more widely connected, probably in large part due to technology, LinkedIn. We could go into any of that.
Yep.
I think that's a great point. I don't know if you've been following along, Kim, but I can't tell you how many people have chimed in that they miss hugs.
Oh
I
gosh,
don't know if
yes.
there's been handshakes in there. I
Terrible.
personally miss handshakes as well, because I feel like that's a connection. I've shaken one hand
Mm-hmm.
between March and now. And of
Yep.
course, immediately sanitized and all of that business. But,
In the shower, right?
you know, when other people
Yeah.
tell me that they've shaken just one hand, it's almost always a child who offered their hand, or an older, like, loved one or colleague who offered their hand, where they couldn't bring themselves to say no,
Yep.
even though they were a little nervous about it. That physical connection, that physical
Huge.
touch. If you and I were in the same room, our conversation would begin and end with a huge hug,
Oh yeah,
because
that's right.
that's who we are. And I want to come back to a point that you said earlier. You mentioned that you were extroverted. You know that I'm more on the introverted side of things.
Right.
There is a misconception of introverts that we don't need connection, that we would
Not
rather
true.
crawl into a closet and turn off all the lights and isolate ourselves from
Right.
society. And that's
Not
not
true.
true. Even Susan Cain herself, who wrote the book Quiet, said, we all crave connection. We don't talk enough about what type of connection and how much of it. Um,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so
And
as
this
we're
is, yeah, go. You go.
just as
Sorry.
we're talking about personality style, I just want to put that out there right off the bat, that extroverted, introverted, anywhere in between, ambiverted, we all crave connection. And so I think each of us in our own way is sitting here in front of our computer screen right now, grappling with that.
Yeah, there's a this idea that, so loneliness is sort of a topic that's a little bit underneath all of this, and the idea, or belonging is another big component, I think, here. But this idea that, like, if we feel lonely, part of that is we all have unique needs to belong. We all have unique, so that meter isn't the same for everyone. So it's really, where's your meter, and then how much is your life meeting that? Meter's not a great word, but it's that idea. We're not all the same. I will say this though, I do think there's something that we all do have, to want to have genuine, real being seen from other people. I think that's a pretty basic human thing, even if it's just with a couple of other folks.
Being
But we
seen, are you saying being seen and acknowledged for who we are as individuals, the
absolutely.
value we're bringing to our work, the value to relationships, separate and apart from your experience of anybody else, really?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And this idea of really listening to someone.
Yeah.
And that, listening is, I'm going to link up a book that I just happened to find this morning that I bought and dying to read, called You're Not Listening, by a woman called Kate Murphy. And it's about this. It's about how we don't really know, we don't often give each other the gift of listening.
We
And
will
it's a huge
include
deal.
We will include, thank you, any resources that are mentioned and even some that aren't in a follow-up email to all attendees. So I'll hear from Kim what links she'd like me to pass along, and we'll try to remember to include a link to that book. I will tell you, Kim, very honestly, it's all about candor and vulnerability during these lunch dates, is that
Yeah.
I often feel the most guilty when my wife Katie has told me something about her day. She comes home, I have a bunch on my mind. Maybe I'm doing dishes, she's unpacking her stuff. She's a first grade teacher. She's telling me something about her day or something about dinner that we're going to make or something. And I know she's talking. I'm in my own world, and I have to pause and ask her to repeat something that she said because I wasn't paying attention. And in the moment, it's not a big thing unless she has to repeat a whole bunch of stuff that she just said, but it is a big thing because I wasn't actively listening to her. So whenever I have to ask her to stop and repeat herself because I was tuned out, that's something that really stays with me. So 5 minutes left. That's always how this happens. I want to make sure before we end our time together and this series for 2020 at least, I want to make sure we're leaving people with actionable tips. We've spent a lot of time talking about the challenges that we face, the challenges that we perceive. People were kind enough to chime in on the poll and in the chat area. A bunch of virtual hugging going on back and forth. I freaking love it.
Yay.
What are some of your most actionable tips for how we can feel more meaningfully connected to ourselves, to one another, and to the work that we do?
I think, I will say, I think it's worth, as a true actionable thing, I think it's worth investigating. Like when we talk about this book about listening, or really digging into any of these topics, just I'll link up a Brene Brown episode. She's actually not my favorite anymore, but she interviewed a guy named Vivek Murthy who wrote a book called Lonely, or Together, and it's about loneliness. I think just getting into this headspace a little bit to start to see how it's impacting you, right? To sort of start in, what does community mean to you? What does belonging mean to you? Are your needs there being met? How skillful is your listening? And be honest with yourself, right? If you're always, so I think those are real things. I think another thing we can do, particularly in this time, and we're certainly in Chicago, so now we're heading into the deep dark of COVID winter, is take some time to sit with yourself, put your phone away, and just that's not easy. But that idea of sitting with yourself for just a little while, I think can be powerful. Without all the tech, without all the stuff. Maybe another good one inspired by right now is, hug your kids if you got them, hug your pets if you got them, right? Yeah, here's another weird idea. Maybe don't get on Zoom, but get on a phone call with a friend or a parent or whoever it is. Sometimes phone, when you just have voice, you don't have the distraction of video. It's a fairly intimate kind of a channel. I think that can be helpful too. I'm seeing like insight time or getting into meditation. It's this idea that we have to first belong to ourselves. The opportunity of now is to tune there first. And then, and here's another one. Think about people in your own, you don't want me to get going. I like ideas. Another one is is there someone who you can think of that might be alone? I have a neighbor who's on her own. Her husband had passed away several years ago. And this has been a really hard time for her. And so I make a real point, texting her, staying connected, calling her. That's a way we can make a better world, is to, so we're connecting to ourselves, but also reaching out. And, who are those people who you might know who need a little extra, hello, how are you doing? And then give them some time to talk.
I love that. And I don't know if this is considered an irony or not. Sometimes I have a hard time defining that word, but the fact that a conversation about meaningful connection can start with solitude, with being alone with yourself, being introspection apart from others, to first know yourself before you can come to know other people. And that's a message that's throughout the work that I do with the DISC personality
Yep.
assessment is I don't know that there's much you can do in the way of connecting with other people and understanding them until you first connect with yourself and understand yourself. So I'm so glad that that came up as a point today. People know these conversations aren't scripted, so when gold like that comes out from Kim LeClair, it is uniquely inspired, right?
Here's one more. Can I say one more?
Well, you can
When
say one more,
when
yeah.
when this is finally over, which hopefully someday it will be, when hug hard, and when you go to dinner, keep your damn phone in your pocket. Connect with the person you're sitting across the table from. Don't forget what this felt like. So
Yes, ma'am. I can't add anything to it. People are going to want to connect with you. They're going to find out, they want to find out what you do through East Willow. They're going to want to see how you can help them connect more meaningfully with themselves, with one another, and their message, their value in terms of how they articulate that through websites that they're involved with, or, maybe we have some business owners on the call. What is the best way for people to get in touch with you?
probably just the easy old fashioned way. Kim@eastwillow.com. Like, and super, or like some of you, like as I was here last week, connected on LinkedIn, can do that there. I'll hook up my profile, but you can just Kim@eastwillow.com. I'm around. I love meeting new people. So, yeah. And you send out a summary, I think. So I've
Yeah.
got some book stuff that all are, I think, good suggests. So that's the easiest way. Email.
Wonderful.
Area
Well,
Kurschat.
folks, that's it. That is it for this series, this installment of the Harmony Insights lunch date series. It couldn't have tied up any more perfectly. I know we're right at 12:30. I just want to wrap this up briefly. It couldn't have tied up any more perfectly. I have been saying throughout, and I don't know how many, we've done dozens of these, certainly since April. I've said throughout that coincidentally, my guests have chosen topics that almost to a one have come back to meaningful connection. And for some people, it's how they parent. And for other people, it's how they network. And for others, it's, how they do the vitally important work of human resources. But there's always this connection through line, meaningful connection, not the LinkedIn, I hit a button, so we're connected connection, but meaningful, intentional connection with one another. And the fact that I would then get you on the calendar and say, what do you want to talk about? And we talk about this silver lining of turning toward one another. I just honestly can't imagine a better way to wrap this up. I started this in April to be inspired myself, and that's exactly what happened. Ever since then, every conversation I think has left me more inspired to do the meaningful work that I try to do, and hopefully along the way has inspired all of you to do the same. Kim, I can't express enough how grateful I am that you would join us for this final conversation.
Erich. So everyone, I should say a big round of applause to Erich Kurschat for being one of my most amazing. I tell people all the time, you are to me mind-blowingly awesome. And I mean that in a very real way. What you have, yes, see, Sean, yes. What you've done here, creating opportunities for people and the way that you show up, which is this thoughtful, gentle, and let's not forget the bearded, but in this thoughtful, gentle, just so much, Erich, you're bringing. I hope you feel that really deeply. There are a lot of people who are getting filled up in a meaningful way because of what you're doing. So thank you.
I really appreciate you saying that. I've made some good friends, some people. Mike Nadler is on here. Allison, a number of people have been to so many of these that I've lost count. I should start mailing out T-shirts to the people who have spent every lunch hour with us. And to let people know, if you're curious, I'm bringing these to an early close this year because sometimes you have to say no to some things to say yes to some other things. And I have been promising since April that there would be video recordings or recordings period of these available. And I've not put any of them out on YouTube yet. I've had to purchase a new computer. I've had to purchase the technology. I've had to build skills. But as long as I'm continuing to hold these conversations and focusing so much on them, I'm not getting to something that I've been promising for far too long. So my goal is to spend the latter portion of this year preparing the dozens of videos that I have, getting them edited. I have to learn iMovie, getting them posted to YouTube and all of that so that you can revisit them, see new ones, share them, all of that stuff. So I'm taking a break from this portion of the lunch dates, but I'm very much still going to be focused on the lunch dates and in fulfilling promises that I've been making for months now. Enough about that. I really, I can't say enough. And if you gave me the time, probably would continue trying to express my gratitude. In the meantime, if you need, as always, to get about your afternoon, you're more than welcome to do so at this point with our blessing. Hopefully you're off to do your work more inspired in some way based on this conversation. Hopefully you will check out Kim's website at eastwillow.com, find her on LinkedIn, and connect with her through what we will send in a follow-up email. If you want to stick around, you're welcome to do so to continue the conversation. But just one final time, Kim, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Erich. Thank you for inviting me.